Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show, and I am your host, Desiree Duffy, and today we have a very special guest, and we're going to find out ways that can help us understand racism better with his book. But first, I want to tell you really quickly about our wonderful sponsor, Novelties. Check these out. I know they look like books, but they're tins. They're tea tins. And they're made in the design of classic books. There's all kinds of them. This is Peter Pan, or actually P.O.P. Pan. But you can check them out at noveltytins.com. They have all sorts of lovely flavors and tea tins that any bibliophile or tea lover is going to absolutely enjoy. But now, okay, this is going to be an interesting show because we're living in times, I feel, where people are becoming more and more polarized. And the question comes up, what can we really do to heal the divide that we feel is happening between Black and brown and white people? Is it possible for us to open our hearts and our minds and ask ourselves, what are we racing for? JD Mass. He was a white kid who was raised and sent to a mostly Black school in St. Louis, Missouri. His parents were very determined for him to be raised in a diverse community where he could experience racism and cultural differences. And guess what? They succeeded. And JD would go on to grow and learn and thrive in schools that were 85 to 93% Black. There, he learned the value of other ethnicities and appreciation for Black culture. In 2017, JD achieved his doctorate in organizational psychology and became heavily involved in white anti-racism groups in Los Angeles and in St. Louis. Today, JD has masterfully weaved his message into his book, which is called Race for What? A White Man's Journey and Guide to Healing Racism from Within. JD, thank you for joining us. I have a feeling we're going to have a really in-depth conversation. And let's start. I want to get right to it because I'm looking at a white guy talking to me about racism and talking to other people about racism because you've had this rather unusual experience, I guess. Can you tell me about the privilege that you had while you were growing up?
So, to answer, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me. As far as the privilege goes, I was able to recognize that on multiple levels early on. For one, I had the privilege of, as you said, growing up in a white family space as well as in a Black community space and getting to really learn the differences. I also was able to recognize how others treated me, especially when I was in public without my friends around, and how we were treated differently. For instance, whether it was in stores, returning items, I could walk right into any store, not be questioned. Whereas my friends, I witnessed them either be questioned, denied, and sometimes I would even go back and take back the same items that they were trying to return, and successfully be able to do so to the same person within minutes of even being them being denied. So yes, I got to see very big differences in how I was treated.
And I really want to get into some of those stories. First, tell me, what did you feel like with Black families compared to your own and white families? Did they welcome you, or did you feel a stronger sense of community with them?
Yes, for sure. I speak of this in the book, and just in general, Black families and the Black communities that I've been involved with have been extremely welcoming to me, and allowing me to be shy when I've been shy, even though they've made fun of me at times when I was shy, but allowing me to kind of just be who I am. And as long as I stayed true to that and felt comfortable being that, then whatever was kind of accepted. Whereas in white spaces, I've often kind of felt like this need to fit the desired image of who they want me to be, based on my parents, based on my family, and how I would speak. I've just taken a comfort to which we called slang back in the day, went through Ebonics and whatever you want to call it, just a comfort to that style of speaking. And it was hard to be received in the same way and around my white family and outside community.
Yeah. And you raise so many important points there. I do. I want to get into what it is about Black families, and just even in your book, you speak and write in a way that's just, you're laying it on the table. You're not holding back. You're not trying to be wishy washy with your words or expect us to understand what's going on with a lot of subtext. You come right out and say it. And I appreciate that. I want to get into that. But first, when you talk about this trash talking, let's talk about that a little bit, because in a way it seems like you bonded more so by almost talking smack with
Yeah.
this. Yeah, talk about that. How
So
does that work?
let me say that in the beginning, I went home crying several times, or at school, I would turn red and tears would come down my eyes because I didn't know how to respond initially. As I saw that I was still welcomed back, and there was just fun and games and a way to just communicate and pick at each other's differences in a way that also allowed us to be different. Trash talking became fun for me, and I learned how to do so, and come back and found that I was pretty good at it at times, and so it was just a way to communicate differences, and have a great time acknowledging them while also having fun and laughing. And it also,
Yeah.
I think, it pushes in a competitive nature at times. It also pushes us to be even better because you got to back up what you say. So
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It kind of reminds me of, if you watch a comedy roast or something
right,
along those lines, where you're just tearing somebody apart, but deep down inside, you love them
yeah,
and you appreciate them, and it's
yeah.
just a form of communication.
Like
Okay.
uh,
Oh, go ahead.
my favorite sports show is Inside the NBA, and Charles Barkley says it quite often. If you can't make fun of yourself, then something might be inside of you that's having problems. And that's, I mean, he gets made fun of constantly, and they make fun of each other constantly, and that's sort of the fun and in ways that I enjoyed trash talking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it reveals something about ourselves, and maybe it's, if
Right.
you hear something, you should take note a little bit and not
Yeah.
be so sensitive.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the ideas that you're bringing forth in your book, Race for What, which, by the way, I applaud you for writing this, because it takes bravery to go out there and say a lot of what you're saying in such a matter of fact way. And you have 7 steps for addressing the racial divide. You want to walk me through those steps really quick from 1
Sure.
to 7?
So, step one, don't make a move. Seek some understanding. Just stop for a moment. Step two is to acknowledge the harm, not only of anti Black racism, but of some of the cultural traits that we picked up in the way that we built these systems of colonization. Step three would be to now learn how to let that go so that we don't keep carrying that forward, as we look to build something new and make the changes. Step four is, if we create that space from step three, to appreciate the value of specifically Black culture in this context, but in of other cultures as
Mhm.
well. We have to learn how to appreciate those without feeling worse about ourselves. Step five then is to take on the step of reparations, which if we can value and appreciate the value, then the cost of reparations doesn't hurt us so much. And step 6 would be starting the rebuilding process of healing. And that is to take on a new mindset and allow some direction to guide us in our role of building a new world. And step 7 would be a world of humanity.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And your book exemplifies too just this idea of you're going to be a little bit harsh and forthright, but at the same time, what it boils down to is we're all humans, and you're
Yes.
coming at it with a feeling of love and acceptance. So it doesn't have to be something that is difficult or hard or painful.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit. I want to touch on reparations because that's something that's a very hot topic right now.
Right.
But kind of going back to the politics of this too. One of the things that I've heard is that you like it when in Trump culture, people who support Donald Trump, they talk very matter-of-factly. What is it that you like about Trump culture and that communication?
So while I disagree with a lot of what they represent, I like it that we have an ability to be out in front, right? There's an expressed pain that a lot of us are going through, Black, white, and every other culture right now. And I think that pain is expressed, whether it's expressed in politically correct language or not, or in a ways that's helpful. As long as we can have some type of expression of it, that opens us up to at least acknowledge truly where we are and where we stand with one another. And it's easier to make adjustments, to work with and teach one another, learn from one another, if it's a really more honest expression. And that's what I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. And tell me a little bit about your ideas of what the right and the left can maybe learn from you and your book, because you lean maybe a little bit more left, but you, like you said, you understand a lot of what's going on in the right. So what are your ideas there?
So my ideas are really eliminating what we have now termed cancel culture, and I think both sides have it and use it differently. For instance, this whole banning of books right now, and this
Mhm.
idea of not discussing history, and that's a form of cancel culture, if to me, and how I would define it. And I think also then stopping a show, or trying to push a show to be stopped, or a company to be stopped because of certain ways that they represent, and instead of, or politicians who have a past that was more racist, when more racism was uh, not allowed, but accepted. How do we use those as teaching lessons to move ourselves forward in both sides? How do we use this history to make ourselves better, so that we don't repeat it? And I think that canceling on both sides stops the progress of working through the discomfort that we need to in the healing process.
Yeah, yeah. And both sides are accusing the other ones of being the cancel culture, which
I
is
know, it's amazing, because I talk about the power to define, and each position of power creates your own definition of those things. And now you can
mm,
say, well, they're canceling. Well, they're not we're not canceling. We're protecting, and we're doing this. And yeah, it's
yeah, yeah. Well, and what it boils down to, at least for me always, is it's the United States, and we might have disagreements, but at a certain point it's time for us to unite and come together and stop looking for ways to divide ourselves. It
right.
seems a little ridiculous. You mentioned banned books, and now your book just came out, so I don't think it's been banned anywhere yet.
Right.
JD, I'm just kind of curious. What would you do if they banned your book someplace? What would you think about that?
Well, fortunately, there's voices in social media. There's, the book is one tool and one part of what I'm attempting to do. And I'm only hoping that it becomes part of a greater conversation. And if that conversation becomes, why is it banned? Then hopefully I get a voice to express why it shouldn't be banned and what the value of it is. So I will take that as it comes. I hope that it doesn't happen, but my mission is greater than just read the book, and it's not going to fix everything. It's just hopefully inspiring the work that needs to come later on.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's so true. I mean, books give us the genesis for a lot of ideas and everything, but there's a lot of different ways we get our messages out
Right.
there. Let's get into reparations a little bit because this is another hot button topic.
Sure.
Yeah, tell me your thoughts because you have a unique take on reparations.
So, one, my thoughts are that the reason why we haven't had reparations for Black folks in this country and indigenous cultures is just racism, right? We have participated in reparations for many different cultures in the past, including those Jews that were impacted by the European Germany based, oppression and harm caused there. And so we should be just repairing just from that standpoint alone. Secondly, I think we have a culture of reparations. Like we do it through insurance, we do it through subsidies and through bailouts and whatnot. So
Yeah,
we have a history of reparations when things don't go well. And this was an intentional harm throughout our history that we should address. So I give the example, if somebody is walking across the street and they're in the crosswalk and they're going, the signal is there and they're doing things by the law, and another car comes and hits them and injures them severely, we have a reparative process for that. We have reparations for that. We call an ambulance, we take them to the hospital, we get them the necessary healing. We might have to call, and do surgery. And through that healing process, there's pain, there's discomfort. We have a rehabilitation process, and they may never even walk the same. And that doesn't stop us from wanting to heal them. We even have money that can go to them as part of the damages, to repair the damages. So we have a process for reparations, and it comes through work. It comes through pain and discomfort and working through that to get to the point of healing. And then you feel much better. We don't go to them, look, you're in the way of our ability to drive here. Could you please pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get out of the street for us so the rest of us can keep going? And tomorrow you better be back at the workforce, you better be back on the playground, you better do what
yeah.
you need to do on your own. No, we have a process for healing that, and I want that to be the mentality as we look at reparations.
Yeah, yeah. And well, in many ways, it's just been so systemic in our society for so long. And if you look at opportunities in housing, real estate, home ownership,
Right.
education, etc., for a lot of Black and Brown people in the United States, they just did not get the same
Mm,
opportunities. And at
exactly.
some point, we
And
even it out.
And until you repair it, it just doesn't fix itself, right? That just
Yeah,
needs the work to repair it. And it can be not only like a check being written, as we like to say, but in the valuation process. If somebody there's still to this day proof that someone in a Black owned home tries to sell their house and gets an appraisal. And if they had a white friend come the next time and put up white pictures, they get a different value. So it's already subjective enough. We can increase the value of Black folks' homes and start repairing through that process as well. So yes, there's many ways to make this make sense.
what do you say to somebody who says something to the effect of, geez, you know what? It's not as bad as it used to be.
So there was a comedian, and I do not want to get his name wrong, but Hari is from Indian background, but born in the United States. And I saw his special on Netflix, and he broke it down quite beautifully. And he said, going back to this injured person, when his knee is busted and he's bleeding, and he gets into the ambulance and says, "Take me to the hospital. I need to be repaired as soon as possible. I'm dying here." And they go, "Sir, do you realize that 100 years ago, we didn't even have this type of, ambulance? We didn't even have the medical technology that we have today. If we're not addressing the actual issue, but we're using that as an excuse, we're not repairing it." And to me, we're still adding on just at a slower pace to the harm, because there's a higher level of mental anguish going on today, mental health concerns that have not been at this level in the Black community. So in other ways, we're still worse than we were before. And until we start to repair it, we're just adding on at a slower pace to the damage.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because in your book and in your life, and your book is part memoir, part guide. It's got a lot of layers to it.
Yes.
And one of the things you talk about is some of your business ventures, and you were Nelly, the rapper's business
Yes.
manager. Yeah, can you talk about that? Why and how he brought you in to work on some of his ventures and what it was like working with Nelly.
Sure. So Nelly and I grew up. Together. He moved to our neighborhood in the 8th grade, 7th grade, maybe something like that. And he and I, right after middle school, going into high school, started to hang out together. As part of which my best friend brought me into a different group of friends at that time, and so Nelly and I became very close. We connected on many levels. He was definitely the most talented person, and we already saw star qualities in him back in high school. And as I was going through college, I made the tennis team, hurt my back, and started a nonprofit and for-profit tennis teaching organization. So I was always entrepreneurial, and as Nelly's career began to take off, he wanted to be more entrepreneurial and set up businesses, especially in St. Louis initially. And so he brought me in from my banking job, which I took shortly after college, to start to manage some of those entrepreneurial projects.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. You definitely have had a variety of experiences in your life.
I
And
have.
unfortunately, I think not too long ago, Nelly had an interesting experience too. Maybe a mishap on Instagram happened there.
Yes, he did. And I hope that this can blow over for him. But yes,
Yeah, yeah. You got to be careful what you put on social media sometimes. Um,
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I want to dig into just that time, and you talk about Nelly, standing out as a superstar even then. But it seems too like you were just surrounded, and you were part of it too. A group of people that were just superstars in so many ways in the late '80s and '90s in St. Louis. Can you talk about that environment a little bit?
So, yeah, I mean, U City, which is part of St. Louis, and I love to speak on and represent. Uh, we had, maybe to the outside world, a level of arrogance. To us, it was a level of just confidence and challenging ourselves to be better and be the best. And there just was really, really talented people coming out of that area. Shortly after us, Bradley Beals, whose mom taught at our school and was our girls' basketball coach, and Jason Tatum grew up in that area, whose mom was shortly after, shortly behind me in school there, came from that area. We just have a history of appreciating, the talent that's come from our our area, and really pushing that talent further.
What do you think it would have been like? Because you touched on this before, and I wanted to circle back to it. And if you do have a story to share, because you talk about taking back merchandise, sneakers, for example, for your friends, because when they did it, they wouldn't get the return. You'd walk
Right.
in because you were white, and you'd get it. I mean, talk a little bit about that if you want to share that story. And I'm curious too, was the atmosphere of the time something that maybe spurred on that creativity and that desire to excel, or do you think it held people in your community back?
So for us, we tried to find what we would call flaws in the system, and one of those flaws was that if you were white, you could get away with stuff. So I was kind of happily engaged in being used for that purpose at times, if it was my own little reparation kind of project. But uh, I would I would be able to take products back. And so there was a time at one point where my friend, who's 6'4", wears a size 12 shoe, would be at the mall. I was at a different part of the mall, and he would call me up and say, "Hey, Famous Bar just denied me from taking back our, Reebok Club Classics." And I met him right in the parking lot, grabbed the same bag, went back to the same guy who I probably had taken 12 different shoes back at different points in time, of
Yeah.
different sizes from 7 to 12, and was able to return the same shoes he was just denied, without a problem. So yes,
Yeah.
that became a larger scheme later on down, and as we kind of got mad at the system.
Right, right. And that again leads back to the book and your reason for writing it and everything. I want to touch back on some of the steps that we went over because we talked about step number 5. Um, Let me just go from 1. Let's do 1 and then 7 because I feel that frames everything that you're doing very, very well. So that first step, you say don't move, and it kind of takes me aback a little bit.
Right.
Can you explain exactly what you mean by that?
Sure. So I think when we learn something new that we feel better about ourselves about, the natural instinct is the emotion of zeal. Right now, we want to go and help change everybody. So when I went vegan, um, I was ready to change everybody. If you were, I wanted to smack hamburgers out of people's hands and save their lives and whatnot, right? And so, through the community I was with, they had to teach me, like, slow down. That's not how we're going to change this world. But to appreciate and be able to channel that zeal in a way that I gained more knowledge and being able to express myself. And that's what I'm asking for here. We, a lot of us are going through the idea of recognizing that aha moment where, oh, we have privilege. Oh, racism hasn't been healed. Oh, I need to do something about it. And while we do have quite a bit of an understanding now of our history and how it's continued to replicate itself, we don't have an understanding as much about why. And so I challenge us to start to just even consider the why. I don't know if I got the right why right, but why this low melanated skin became the term white, and why did that where did that have us, and what did we develop, socially, mentally, and our approach and our intentions of building a system? Because I believe that based on our low melanated skin at a time when we didn't have SPF 50 and, cars and buildings and things, we being outside in agriculture was so important. We ended up in an area where there was less sun, and less sun meant less natural resources, which means we felt that there was a scarcity. And if somebody had something, we didn't. And as we went to approach cultures that were spent a lot of time in the sun and had an abundance of natural resources, their their developed culture was very different. It was much more connected to the earth. It was much more appreciative of everything. And there wasn't a need to take from one another because there was a much more ability and reason to share. And in our approach, we took their sharing with the scarcity mentality and said, no, we need to take, because if you got it, we don't, and we need it. And from there we grew without ever being addressing that mentality that took place. And so I want us to really start to reflect on that type of cultural mentality that's building this system over time. The other part is white supremacy and the idea that having low melanated skin made us supreme, which was a lie. And if you start with a lie, then you have to support it with many more lies. And now we built a system of deception, and we built a system based on destructive methods. And I think it's time for us to address those as a cultural,
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and I'm going to take you all the way to step 7 because that's the manifesting our
Right.
humanity. Tell us really quick about your thoughts on that.
So my thoughts on that is that if we just simply switch the mindset from that of scarcity that to that of an abundance that we can share, that we can eliminate some of the work that we do that doesn't really provide a benefit to the connection of the planet and the connection to each other, that we can actually start to see the value in the connections to each other. We can build an interactive space that allows us to see and appreciate the value of just sharing, supporting one another, serving one another, and enjoying life as it's already been created for us to enjoy on this planet. And I think for one is I ask people quite often, when you look outside, are we trained to even see the life that's growing around us? Or do we see the concrete? Do we see the automobiles? Do we see the brands that we've been created to notice? And are we missing out? I mean, we get frustrated when life grows between our concrete, that in the cracks, and we're trying to get rid of it. And yet we're missing the point that already was in existence. And so
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
want us to appreciate.
Oh, that's such a great message, JD. And your book is filled with real life experiences. They're eye opening. You have such an amazing perspective that's so unique. And you've hung out with rappers and business people, and you've done so much in your travels and your journeys. We're scratching the surface. So that is why go ahead and hold up. I know you have an ARC or an advanced reading copy of the book. So it's got that weird band across it. But there you go. There's the picture from that was prom when you were in high
Yeah,
school. Is that it? I love
our
that.
prom picture. Yes, I get told I didn't know you were in a singing group. No, we weren't a singing group. We were just at prom having a good time together.
Yeah, you do. You look like you're in a doo-wop group or
Yeah,
something like that. I love that. I love that. Okay. JD Mass and his book, Race for What? A White Man's Journey and Guide to Healing Racism from Within. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a
thank
pleasure.
thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for being on the show with us today for Books That Make You. Please join us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. And you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, don't forget to ring the bell here on YouTube so you are subscribed and you don't miss an episode of the show. JD, really quick, give us your details too. Where can people find your website and find your book?
So the website is raceforwhat.com, all spelled out. And the book is available for pre-order in print version on the website, as well as there's link to the Kindle version on Amazon, raceforwhat.com, and it's JD Mass is the author.
Yep, that's you. JD, thank you for being with us today. And until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.